Oh.
What size were you?
I've kept all that kit for you, Colin. I've kept it all. Don't worry about that, bro. Don't worry about that.
Oh my God. I think we should just talk amongst ourselves and have an evening together, forget about anybody else.
Do you know what? For a man that Pete said he was worried about you being poorly, you're looking good, bro. Well done. Well
Wait, I saw
done.
this-
Looking good.
4 weeks out of 6 in hospital, yeah.
I know, bless you. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I thought I'd do this in hospital, have a better outcome.
Niall, lovely to see you. Lewis, is it Lewis or Louis?
Yeah,
Louis. Lou, how you doing, mate? I've got a son called Lucas. I used to call him Lou. Now I just call him Sir because he's 6 foot and bigger than me. So.
Is he qualified yet, mate?
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Oh, I was just trying to get some free medical advice. I'll wait for another time.
No, Lucas is doing accountancy.
Oh, that's more important, mate.
Yeah.
We're on it, we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have 19 attendees at the moment.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pop on mute.
I'm just gonna give it a few minutes, people, so everyone can join. We'll go from there.
If he's joined us on the attendees as opposed to the panelists, Cole, I noticed he's on one of the attendees.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, he's pro game. We don't really want them about, do we? Mix him with the. Can we get him transferred at all? Where's John?
Who is it?
It's what's his name? Oh,
Iffy.
Ifeanora.
Michael has joined as Colin as well.
Michael Bennett.
There's Iffy now. Yeah.
We need a translator now, don't we? Is Steve still here?
Colin, yeah, I heard that. That's naughty. Hey, that's not racist. That's northist.
Thank God for that. All these bloody Northerners on are taking off.
Colin thinks we all live in Coronation Street.
I thought you were, mate. And they've got a program on 20 years ago. It looks exactly the same.
I know.
Coronation Street Classic.
I know. We're getting running water next week. Looking forward to that.
Okay.
How are we all, guys?
Hey.
Iffy, how are you, brother?
Oh,
How are you,
good. Yeah, nice to see friends and colleagues, ex-colleagues, friends, ex-friends. If you carry on talking to me like that.
In the pro game, I do apologise, mate. I tell you what. You started a new job, Iffy?
I have, yeah. Oh, Ben, all right?
There's Michael there.
Yeah, of course he's here.
Yeah, how are you?
Good, my friend, good.
You look relaxed, mate. We're never that relaxed at PFA, mate.
Just all that weight off my shoulders, Ben. Oh, it's gone. Stop carrying you.
That was nasty.
I'm not even biting at that.
Yeah, you don't deserve that, Benno. Not you.
You know better than that, mate.
He threw out that bait, Michael. You just had to catch it, mate, and he'd have reeled you in, mate. I'll tell you.
Always do.
No, good.
If he's clearly cleared his contact list since he's left the PFA, Butch, I'll be in contact. 2 months later. 2 seconds.
It's coming, Butch. It's coming.
Oh, right, okay.
It's in the post. Yeah. Nah, it's been full on, guys. So yeah. I was only in the position. I was only in situ a couple of weeks, and he starts on this Super League business. Honestly, that just wiped out 2 weeks of my work there. Just everything was scrambling to the decks.
All right, ladies and gents, let's start, yeah? So, thanks for everyone to coming, especially the panelists and the attendees. My name is Louis Madden. For those of you that don't know me, I did my level 1 with Colin about 10 years ago. Since then, I went to work in academies as a scout. I'm now the head of a grassroots team in South London that has 21 teams. I run a football program in Brixton, community driven, and I have a one-to-one and small group session business. So the purpose of today, we're all here to speak about making Black mental health matter in football, be it coaches, players, physios, agents, however, and the progression of Black and Asian coaches and anyone really that's involved in any capacity in the professional game. So to start off, Dr. Colin King is going to talk to us about his lived experience of racism and mental health in the pro game.
Okay, Lewis, thank you very much. And I owe a lot to Lewis as a protege, and he's the future of the young generation as I come to my retirement. Some should have said a lot earlier than it happens now. Can you look at the PowerPoint, please, John? So if we could do a full screen, that'd be really helpful. So today we remember two symbolically important moments in our experiences of Black people in the professional game. George Floyd, which has been well publicized today, but also I really got to pay a big memory to somebody by the name of Dalian Atkinson, who has lost the public scrutiny that he deserves and the way he's been treated in our mental health network. And it's something we really got to challenge and change around. If we go to the next slide, program is flexible. We're going to have a lot of time about question and answers. We really want to focus on something called, which is Michael's model, the lived experiences of racism. And I'll be talking about schizophrenia being diagnosed at a very early age. Got Peter doing a fantastic interview with Amara, and I'm really privileged to have her here today, given the plight that women experience in the game at the moment. Dr. Michael Bennett, who's probably going to do the most revolutionary, insightful analysis of something around racism online. And then opportunity for you here today to challenge, ask questions, do not be silent, open talk is the approach for today. We are unbelievably fortunate to have the most renowned public psychiatry journal in here today, and hopefully we can produce something for that. But to begin to address what the context is in the next slide, BACA was formed over 10 years ago, and it was really trying to address a huge gap around race equality and opportunities for BME coaches. Excuse me if I'm not using the right narrative in terms of what we mean by race. In the next slide, just want to talk about 4 areas of my life that have affected me and how these models affect and have impact in our lives, and what does it mean in terms of the lived experience. So I come from a generation of where we were deemed as educationally subnormal because of the theory of Isaacs and Jensen. So we were 3 times more likely to be excluded. I was expelled from school, and I was one of those children who fortunately was given the title of education subnormal. And anybody was fortunate to write a fantastic program last week on BBC that broke down the huge number of children that were actually misdiagnosed. And part of this diagnosis is linked and inherited from a US-centric biomedical model, which means that the experiences of us are looked through European lenses. Unfortunately, at this time, and it's a very serious moment for our social history in terms of mental health, we're 4 times more likely to be sectioned. Women are 10 times more likely to die in maternity care. And I was diagnosed with schizophrenia after I tried to get into the professional game. And I was told by a coach that ends couldn't read the game. And that was really about what we call this physical perception of people that are different, that originated from theories from Darwin and Jung. And it actually still takes place in our FA manual. And there is a theory that we as a people are more likely to die from cardiac arrest. Michael offered me some really important statistics as somebody who went to prison from mental health setting and actually didn't have the opportunity to play professional, but actually had a long experience in the professional game. And we were known as having a black disease, which means we were criminalized by our system at this moment in time. And this is why it's really important that George Floyd and the experiences of Daley is put into context, that people from our particular cultural heritage are more likely to be restrained in the mental health system. But that restraint carries through, and we've got some really excellent people here can talk about the pro game. I'm really focused on grassroots, having 20 years of setting up community-based grassroots clubs and really trying to do with immense racialized barriers and really being forced into playing what's someone told me in my research, having to play the white men in the social corner. And coaching for me wasn't about technical experiences, it's having to perform within the environment. And some people say there's a similar relationship between the mental health setting and the coaching setting. It produces forms of madness. I'm just going to give you a couple examples, so I'm actually on time for this presentation. In the next slide, a time to repair. And I'm really privileged to have done a lot of work with Michael and often lots of talks with Steve about how do we repair ourselves? How do we, and this is a theory that's been developed by Michael Bennett, and it's been published in the Lancet Psychiatry about removing the mask. And this word about looking at our authentic self, but really understanding where does the origins of the knee come from? And the knee originated during the period of slavery when we were seen as not human. Actually, we were suffering from a disease called depomania. So if we ran away, we were actually diagnosed. How do we then begin to look at a lived experience coaching model that reflects who we are? But also, how do we look at mental health from our experiences rather than mine, National Service, World Health Organization, and also the huge interest that's been developed by the royal family? Because ultimately, if we look at the relationship, this crucial, important relationship between mental health and sport, how has the absence of Black and Asian coach educators made us technically undeveloped, losing our confidence to coach through our own experiences? Very similar to this fantastic book written by Bernard Corr back in the 1970s about having to wear this white mask of coaching. And what does it do when we begin to review who we really are beyond the mask? And let's look at the next slide, because I want to put a different context to this. Time to share and repair is not the responsibility only of, wherever we talk, ethnic diverse, it's the responsibility of white privilege. The theory developed by Steve is reverse mentoring. If you diagnose this institutional framework, you'll find forms of madness that there has been no Black people in senior technical positions within football over a 60-year period since Walter Winterbottom right through to Charles Hughes, and some people may not know who these people actually are, to the mental health sitting with Tim Kendall, who runs the mental health in this country, to now we have a national inclusion and diversity lead who's not a person of our cultural heritage. How are these people going to change? How are we actually going to ensure that they actually have a responsibility to address not only their behavior, but the types of mental health processes that may impinge upon our lives? I'm just going to go to the next slide so we keep the time. So sorry. I'm going to celebrate, this is a really important moment, that there are crucially important people in this industry that have shown an inclination and an understanding to work across the colour line and to make a difference. So I'm going to celebrate Julie, who we don't know, who was a leading coach educator who actually died of cancer 2 weeks ago. I'll go to Gordon Taylor, who people know well for the PFA, who leaves the PFA at the end of June, who's been a fantastic advocate of change and challenge. Dick Bates for me, who ran our 2005 first ever coach A licensed PEP course, and I know Butch was on that, and so forth and so forth. People there that are crucially changing the way we think. Let's go to the next slide. Because if that happens, we're going to lose Black talent. Here are some people, unfortunately, that we have lost either through they're passed on, and we got the great John in the corner, who was a fantastic coach educator and advocate for social change and mental health. people like Noel Blake, Chris Ramsey, huge pool of talent we have lost. But these people have been damaged by really, really institutional forms of racism. And then we've got to question this today as we move on. Is my coach education right? Do we need a Black coaching perspective? And unless we have that, we're not going to change the way we actually feel about ourselves, in which Michael says, those 4 corners. How do we learn from our lived experience? But I'm really privileged is that we've got Lewis on the line and a huge new generation of coaches that we've got to leave some sort of baton and legacy for. Just going to move on to, I think, my last slide. For me, at the moment, after 40 years of activism and become a coach educator, and knowing that I know there's people who are moving on, we may lose important role models. At the end of June, a lot of the coach educators will lose their tutoring status. And we just saw a structure that's mainly white and white privilege. And it's really important that we have people like Butch here today. Steve will still be around, the PFA, how we now come together to ensure that the future for people like Lewis, for the huge young people who are victims to misdiagnosis in their mental health system, criminalization of criminal justice system, not succeeding, that we actually leave a legacy and an openness, but also that we address the important issue that Michael raises around a model, a therapeutic model that enables them to self-actualize and develop. But I'm going to finish on one crucial point that we as Black men must remember, and it's a point that comes out from Malcolm X. It's just in the last slide. The big issue here is that Black women are going through some serious discrimination that we need to confront across the color line, across gender lines. We've got Hope, we've got Christina, who I think he went through the worst treatment, and I really kind of respect that person and the support. And I must celebrate somebody by the name of Simone Powell, who I hope she's on the call today, who's given 21 years of service to race equality in the position of Black women. I really want to end this with some hope that I think we can achieve if we work together professionally, economically, and politically. But I want to move on to Peter, who I really can't stand, but he's here today. He's going to take us through the next step of beginning to understand something we don't really look at, the experience of Black women. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Colin. I love you, though. And I know that hurts you when I say that. So, Amira, we've worked together, and I've known you for quite some time. But how did you first get into football?
It actually, can I just say, Colin, that was really, it was really moving, and it was really interesting just to hear what you've said there and the things that you brought forward. And I hope I'll pose the questions later, but hopefully that under the subject of role models that we will lose, I hope that's not the case, and hopefully with this movement and everything else that's going on, that we are working towards better days. But okay, so to the point, Pete. So I forgot your first question. How did I get into football?
How did you get into football?
So basically, when I was really young, this was like a million years ago. So in the 80s, I kind of, my mum was a single parent, and at that time, the school offered uniquely a young soccer social session on concrete, may I add, and she stuck me there purely because she just wanted me to get out of the way, and so she could get on with her duties and whatnot. And I fell in love. It was as simple as that. That's kind of how the journey began. But as I kind of went through kind of the academic journey, there just, again, in the 80s, there just wasn't the opportunity there for me. It wasn't even about my race or my background. It was just purely football for women just wasn't there as per the opportunities now. So that's kind of where it all began. And as I went through and got older, went through uni and everything else, I just always loved the game. Oh, am I still here?
You
The
are,
screen
yeah.
went a bit funny.
No, you're okay.
And then, long story short, it was actually at a social event one day. Someone picked up, and at this point, I was in my late 20s, approaching early 30s, and it was actually someone that had that was a coach within the FA, a white middle-aged man, who just picked up on my enthusiasm, Kevin Finnerty, and just said, "Oh, you sound so enthusiastic about football. Have you ever thought about being a coach?" And that is literally how my journey started. And that was in 2012. And at that point, I was, I had a day job, and I was in a kind of long-term partnership, ready to get married, and all sorts. So I kind of thought about it, and I said to him, I said, "Is it possible? Is it possible to have no qualifications whatsoever and jump straight into football like that?" And he literally took me under his wing. He took me under his wing, introduced me to beautiful people such as Steve right here, and Colin, and then I eventually met you as my tutor, and that's it. That's, you know, the rest. So fell in love even more so, jumped on the courses, done my level 1, done my level 2, and currently on my B license.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant.
Short.
I mean, I think that's a really inspiring story from you, Amira, because you know it can't have always been easy for you. What were some of the sort of hurdles that you faced, if you faced any at all?
So if we're going to go back to the beginning, so I mean, as a child, you're kind of, you're not receptive to the fact that well, in the 80s, football wasn't there for girls or women. So it all stopped for me when I started going into secondary school. I tried my best to join a secondary school team, and I remember there was only one team there, and that was the boys team, and the headmaster let me come along just because he had to. He couldn't say no to me, but it was horrible. It was one of my worst experiences, to be honest, so much so that I can remember it all these years on. I wasn't included, wasn't even acknowledged, and I never looked back. I then decided to take up hockey, took up a different sport, went into university. There wasn't any opportunities there. And then the coaching journey, it's been turbulent, to say the least, but it's got better, and it is getting better. So that's kind of, I'd say, again, just rounding it up, bearing in mind the time that we have. So that I'd say they were the major hurdles that I had.
So as you've gone through your journey, have you noticed more women of color coming into the game, or has it remained the same? Are there any people who you see as role models that you could point to and say, look, yeah, I'd like to be like her?
So far, I would say I started my coaching journey around 2012. Because Kevin Finnerty is just such a great guy, he let me kind of take it at my own pace. So I said to him I wasn't ready. I didn't want to. I find myself very insecure and very kind of feeling very vulnerable in a male-dominating environment, and that's how I saw football. And just for everyone, my corner of the earth is grassroots. So when I started out, everything I experienced, everything I saw, even the FA education experiences, the evening sessions that I went to that were open for everyone, I would rarely see a female presence there. And even up until this day, I barely get 2 or 3 women in the experiences that I've had. as such, in my B license class, for example, there's only, I think there's 2, 3, 4, maybe five girls, 5, maybe 6, just under. So it's been a slow. So I would say that I've been. It's for me to meet someone like me that hasn't happened. But there are role models that I've been that I've been lucky enough to meet. Emma Hayes, the Chelsea first team manager, which I met once at an FA experience with Steve and yourself, and so that there are so many. It's all moving in the right direction, but I would say as I've progressed from 2012 right to now, it's increasing by such a small amount. But I am yet to meet someone from my origins, and but it's getting there. You know, I've connected with coaches like Annie B, Manisha, but again, in grassroots, it's I feel personally it's a much more tougher environment. So I haven't. Again, it's moving in the right direction. So
yeah, I mean, as you say, you've not met anybody who looks like you, and I think from that point of view, you know, I think if we look at the footballing landscape, if in 2021 you still can't go to a course, or you can't still go to an event and still see people who look like you, you can't see any black women. And I'm going to speak from my point of view as a man, I would say that we've still got a lot of work to do in that area. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? Now that you've said that, if I think about all the women that I've mentioned of colour, they have only been at special social events, quite high-profile social events. I can't actually tell you that I've met another woman, another female, grassroots, pitch side, in any environment, nor in the classroom as well. So, and I believe in my heart, and maybe in 10 years I will prove this stat to you guys, but I believe that there are a lot more out there just like me. But for whatever reason, they just need that support to be able to be in the position that I'm in. But yes, yeah, completely agree. But it is all moving in the right direction. You have to stay positive. You just have to. And then open conversations like this is really important, really integral. Because this is quite a new experience for me to speak on this level in this way, and with the caliber of folk on this call, from the panelists to the people actually listening to this call. This is you know, it's all going to spread word of mouth, and this is so important. So I can't express just how grateful I am to all of you taking the time, from the panelists to the people watching this. This is so important.
I think it's really, I think we thank you, Amira, for coming in today, because I think it's really important that we hear the female voice, especially the Black and Asian female voice, which is very, very quiet in the football world. And I think that quite often, if we look at the game, and we look in the women's game, how few Black or Asian women there are in the game, there is so much work still to do. I think trying to stay positive is one way of doing that. But you know, I've noticed with yourself, you've not just worked with girls, although you're a real inspiration to some of the young girls that I see you work with, but you've also worked with boys as well. So you've worked across that grassroots dynamic, and I know that sometimes that's been quite difficult for you, because you've still got some maneuver through the politics of a club and so on and so forth, and the grassroots world, which can be quite it can be even more how can I put it, complicated, let's put it that way, than probably the professional game.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I can't believe you brought this up, but I'll share with everyone here. So I did a stint. It just so happened. So just to kind of help you understand like what my journey was. So after I was kind of taken in under the wing of Kevin Finnerty, so Google his name. I don't know if he's on Google actually, but he should be. So after I was taken under his wing, I was his coaching assistant for about 18 months, maybe just over, maybe about 2 years, because I just didn't feel confident enough to go out there and tell people what to do. And I've never been in leadership roles, and I'm not a parent, and I'm not a teacher. So I kind of said to him, like, I just need to, I love football, but I just need to see what this coaching gig's all about, because I've got no qualifications and did a business degree and love football, but just don't know if I can connect the two. But I just loved it even more, just being pitch side and experiencing the match day experience, and grassroots gave me a sense of freedom that I never thought I could ever. It just hasn't matched anything else in life. So I thought it was time I gave something back. I was an assistant for about 2 years, and I literally was for about 6 months. I was dishing out cones and doing all this. And then I landed my first gig at Met Police Youth FC. That's how that started. Now, Met Police Youth FC have never had a girls or women's section. They had female police officers historically play, but nothing really came out of that. So I was brought along to see if I could just grow the girls section, and could we get a competitive team playing. And that was it. It was a 6-week stint. The incentive was, we can't pay you, but we'll put you on your level 1 and maybe your youth mods and pay for everything else. It just so happened we managed to create a team out of it, and lo and behold, we've now created a girls section, and I've stayed with that club for about, it's coming up to 10 years now. So with that, I kind of, I forgot my point, Pete. I knew I'd do this.
I think it was more about the fact that the work that you've done, the work that you've done, Amira, as a lone female at Met Police is.
Well, that was it. Why was I? How did I get boys? Believe it or not, do you know what I went through? I'll be honest with you, and with everyone here, I don't know whether people just met me and thought, I don't like her, or she's Asian, I don't like her, or she's female, I can't actually, I haven't got the brains to figure out why this has happened. Or maybe it's just the fact that just some humans don't like other humans, that's it. But on a predominantly white committee, I got pulled on to be a part of the club's committee, and it was difficult. It was, again, a role I've not been familiar with. That was another barrier that I experienced, that just rubbing people up the wrong way. My ideas were crazy. Where did that come from? Or who was I to suggest? Who was I in football? I was no one. I kind of got that sort of feeling. And again, this is my personal feeling. And I accidentally thought I was volunteering to help an under-8s team. And it turns out to be an under-16s boys team, which was probably one of the worst experiences of my life. The boys just were completely unreceptive to me, and I came away feeling all sorts. And to be honest, I was ready to walk away. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm useless here. These boys, I spent a season with them and they don't even acknowledge me. What is that about? Didn't even feel, do you know what, Pete? You were my tutor a few times. I could have gone to you. I could have gone to anyone. I knew Colin. Colin, we did the youth mod together. Steve, I met you through Kev. There were so many people I could have reached out to, but for some reason, I didn't feel confident enough to share that. Again, didn't have anyone that I felt I could, that I felt could understand, and I just completely took it within myself, took it as a negative experience, and buried myself and kind of dealt with it in that way. So but here I am. I'm still here. I'm not dead. So I've survived the pandemic. So there's clearly, I know I've got an engine of some sort to deal with stuff, but it's grassroots football. Oh man, if it hadn't done what it done for me back in the day, I think I can understand why there was a slide by Colin about role models we may lose, because I'm talking from my perspective, like pitch side. So I really hope, Colin, we have a presentation soon where we're like celebrating that stuff's finally being done and the negatives out. And I know that sounds really Disney, but that's the happy place I go to. You have to have a happy place in football.
Mara, can I just say that's outstanding, and I am really kind of like emotionally replenished by your contribution.
Oh, thanks, Colin.
Not Peter, because he's a load of rubbish. He bores me. I'm just waiting. No, before we go, because I don't want to be rude, and I don't want to take over Lewis's position, because Michael needs to come in and shoot off really quickly. So Lewis wants to introduce Michael, and we would love to come back to your story in the panel. Is that okay, Amara?
No, do you know what? I told Peter I would do this. I'm sorry, guys.
You've been fantastic.
No problem, Amira. Thank you for that. That was amazing, honestly. And we need that, because without your perseverance, we'd still be where we was 20 years ago with regards to the women's game. So definitely. Moving on, Michael Bennett, Dr. Michael Bennett, who is the Director of Player Welfare for the Professional Footballers Association, is going to discuss the impact of online abuse of race and mental health in the professional game. Thank you, Michael.
No worries. Can you see me? Yeah, I can't see myself. So sorry. I think just because of time, I'm kind of going to whiz through this. Just give a bit of background about myself and my journey, and then the last bit will be about the online abuse and the support we're putting in place, and for you as individuals to look out for as well. So for me, my story is from a professional footballer who got into the professional game, had no aspirations to be a professional footballer, but was picked up by Charlton at the age of 16. We're talking about mental health there, so this is part of my mental health kind of experiences. Going into Charlton as a 16-year-old and being able to be tasked with dealing with the everyday demands of being a professional footballer, which was very, very difficult. And the pressure for me was very, very hard, and it impacted me. It took me a while to get my head around the demands of the professional game. I think that kind of impacted my mental health, but there wasn't any mental health jargon about at that time. You would have heard Colin talk about my paper that I was blessed to be able to write for Lancet Psychiatry, and thank you, Niall. And it's about, it was right about Behind the Mask, and it was called Behind the Mask because I realised that when I played football, I was going into the training ground, putting a mask on and trying to be what they wanted me to be rather than being myself, just to try and fit in. So the mask for me was very emotionally draining. And again, that has a negative impact on your mental health and well-being. And so I had my footballing career, and I think the saying that I would say, this will probably sum it up, is that I was in the game but not part of the game. So I think that I was, I played the game of football, but didn't really fully engage in it because I just felt like I was trying to fit in rather than being able to be myself, as I said, because my aspirations were to go to university and go down the educational route rather than the football route. So quickly moving on, my career was an emotional roller coaster. I call football an emotional roller coaster because your emotions are up and down constantly. And for me personally, when your emotions are up and down in let's say in a training session, one good pass, one bad pass, you're up and then you're down. Let's say in a match, your first tackle is a good tackle, you're up. Your second tackle is a bad tackle, you're down. Your first shot is a goal. Your second shot, you miss it. So you're constantly up and down in this environment of football for 90 plus minutes. So for me, it will have an impact on your mental health and emotional mental health. And that's what I'm seeing right now. I think moving on from that, having had a 20-year career in the game, I went into non-league football at the age of 29, just to try and think about what next steps will be for me in the next chapter of my life. And what I found was that whenever you was kind of asked what you wanted to do, the next pathway was always going into coaching or going into personal training. And so I went into coaching because that was the route everyone else was going into. And went into coaching, and I did my level 2, I can't keep what it is now, level 2. And I was the only black person on the course. And then I did my level 3. And again, I was only a black person on the course. And I completed that coaching badge. I did my coaching badges and expected to walk into a top job at my local club at Charlton. But that didn't happen. And then I picked up working in my local schools in the area. And initially it was working with the kids at lunchtime and after school clubs. But what I found was the after school club was good because you're getting kids that want to be part of the coaching, but the kids at lunchtime and the PE classes, you're having kids that don't want to be there. So for me, it really impacted my mental health because it got to a stage where I really didn't want to go and coach anymore because I just didn't, it wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't, I've got this saying now that if you can't pass the ball 10 yards, bring me someone who can because I ain't got the time. So I realized that my patience as a coach wasn't there. And I decided to walk away from coaching after a year of doing it. Also, I didn't see that I feel I could find any kind of pathway through coaching. And so that was a kind of distraction as well. So if anything today, what I want to try and do is just encourage an individual on this call to kind of persevere. Now, why I say that is because after completing my coaching badges, I then went on to decided I needed to try something different because coaching wasn't going to be for me. And I decided that I wanted to go back to college and pick up my education again, and went back to Lewisham College and spoke to a careers officer and just explained my background and explained, my steps in the game and leaving the game, and was bluntly told by the careers officer that having listened to me, I should do counselling. She felt that my lived experience, my experience in football, my active listening skills, players constantly talking to me was the best route for me in doing that. So I went down the counselling route, and I have to say I absolutely enjoyed it. Absolutely enjoyed just sitting, listening to people, hearing people, encouraging people, uplifting people. It was just so therapeutic. And so I left college 2004 as a qualified counsellor, and then retired from the game at 2004 as a footballer. And my journey took me on to working in problematic schools, predominantly black schools, where I just was there just to encourage these young individuals that, the system might have said you're a failure, but we're just here to showcase that you're not. And that was a great 4 years for me. And then obviously the role came around with the PFA. And I think with the PFA, the key for me was more about encouraging players to undertake education whilst they were playing, because what we was finding that was the issues of mental health was happening when players were leaving the game and transitioning out the game, and they were having to do jobs that they had to do rather than they wanted to do. So that was a big impact to their mental health and well-being. What we found was that, and Gary Speed passed away in 2011, and the department was birthed then, and it was about just offering emotional support to players, both former and current players, and that's been revolutionary, to be fair. And Dr. Colin King has been prevalent in helping me to get that up and running. We've implemented free conferences over the last 4 years. We're now delivering workshops to clubs 18s, 23s and first team. We're now delivering workshops to WSL. We're now recognising that the need for this work is important and working with other stakeholders to do that. But also, I think for me, what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to move from a service-led approach, which is me using my experiences to implement what I think should be implemented for players to access services, to more of a needs-led approach where we're now asking the players what is it they want so we can implement it so they can use the service. So going back to what Lou was talking about in regards to the mental health and issues that we've got in place. Obviously, when I played the game, I encountered racism in football. The 3 clubs that stick out for me were Leeds, Newcastle, and my local club, Millwall. And those experiences kind of really stayed with me. We didn't have no support systems in place back then. We didn't have no one to go to talk to. You're just your family or friends. So we was really left kind of holding those emotional issues in us. And what I found was that you play Saturday, you carry those feelings until your next game, which is Tuesday, or your training session on the Monday, where you probably be kicking lumps out of people just to kind of get that frustration out of your system. So the key for me was that I wanted to kind of, with the current situation that's in place right now, we are seeing a high number of players receiving online abuse. And Simone and myself and the PFA and the FA and a lot of the stakeholders are trying to implement support that we're trying to put out there. And so what I've decided to do was implement a therapeutic service that when a player encounters online abuse or any sort of abuse or discrimination, we have a helpline number that they can call that comes to me, that I triage, and then we offer therapy for those individuals. I think what that has enabled us to do is to kind of, give an outlook, a way out for the individual to kind of showcase and share their emotional distress that they're going through. As Colin mentioned earlier on, I'll finish up now. As Colin mentioned earlier on, the next bit of work that I'm going to be doing is research on racism and the impact of mental health on Black players, because I don't think anyone's really looking at the impact it's having on Black players or players of colour. And this is going to be a key thing for me, because we need to find out what's going on for them. My paper, Demedicalising Race and Mental Health in Professional Football, with the Lancet Psychiatry, talked about how one model can't fit the different cultures that play football. So we need to look at what models we need to implement that fit in with the different cultures that play football. So, so the key for me is going to be looking at the impact of online abuse, speaking to these players and getting their experiences of what that looked like and what that felt like, and then asking them from their experiences what they would like to be implemented in the game, so we can look at making changes and look at supporting the members that are kind of experiencing these online and discrimination issues. Colin's going to leave you with a survey. What we want from you as individuals is cool. It's just to look at, your own stresses of playing, your pressures of coaching. What's it like dealing with rejection and exclusion for yourself, but also with the people that you're coaching? What does that look like? And dealing with the stereotypes that are in football, unfortunately. So, we would like you to fill this survey, and I don't know if you want to do it now or after, Colin, I'm not sure. But your feedback for those who attended will be imperative for us to look at how we can implement change, social change, and hear your voices. I think the key for us is going to be to empower you as individuals. Louis is going to be great with Baka and bringing forward this young generation coming through. But we need to hear that young generation's voice, because they've not been given a voice. And I think the aim for this presentation, the aim for this webinar is to give you individuals a voice to be heard. Empower you, because you're the next generation coming forward. So I appreciate if you could really take part in this questionnaire and help us to help you and to help yourselves moving this forward. So sorry that I've had to rush through this, but I've got a presentation at a club that I've got to rush off to now to do. So it's been great participation. Colin, thanks very much. Louis, thanks very much. John, thanks for doing the presentation as always. Peter, Steve, Butch, good seeing you all. Catch up soon.
Michael, thank you, sir. Yeah, really appreciate your honesty.
God bless, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve, congratulations on your role, mate.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
See you later, guys. Thanks very much.
Take care, Mike.
Take care, Michael.
So now we're going to go over to Steve Smithies.
No, can we just do the poll, Lewis, very quickly?
Oh, sorry.
It's come up on the screen, so we could just go through that really quickly. We just do the first set of questions very quickly. Can everybody see the poll?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just doing it now.
Don't think too much about it. There's no awards for this.
There clearly one is in number 7, Colin.
Ooh.
Mr. Colin King, MBE.
MBE.
Member of Black Exclusion. It's a new one.
If that was the case, then I will take it.
Just give yourself a few minutes and I'll pass it back over to Lewis. We want everybody, including participants, facilitators, everyone to do that. Oh, I see why. Yeah, somebody was that motivation in that voice there. Can we check whether Darren is here? Darren Moore?
Okay, that's some interesting feedback from the results. 75% of us have said that the pandemic has affected our mental health. Okay. Colin, he's on the phone. Moving swiftly on to Steve. Steve, sir, could you introduce yourself, please, and open the floor?
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, listen, we're just going to have a bit of a panel discussion now. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask and any of the guests that have spoken so far, including Lou and Colin and the brilliant Amira, Peter. We also have Butch Fazal on and from the Football Association, and if he's still on. So if you've got any questions, that would be fantastic. I just want to just at this moment say how proud and privileged I am to be on the call tonight, and also really important that we pay our love and respects to Colin as he continues to guide us and show us through these constantly challenging times. And without Colin's inspiration and without all his guidance, I wonder where some of us would be. And it's great to have so many people join us tonight to discuss the issues that are extremely important to us. And they're not important to us because of any one single date. They're important to us every day. I think just to get people going, Colin, if it's okay, Colin, I'm going to start by asking you a question, and then if people would like to ask a question, please pop it into the chat box, or if you raise a hand and we'll get you to speak if you're comfortable. Is that okay, Lou?
Yeah, sweet.
That's okay. Colin, I'd just like to ask you a question, Colin. Colin, do we have enough mental health practitioners, supporters, mentors, Colin, from our own community, Colin, and how important is it that we have representation from our own community when it comes to supporting people over mental health issues?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. I'm sorry, Steve. Some research we did with Michael when we sent it out to the professional clubs, just to find out how culturally competent they are in actually responding to diversity, found that there were no black therapists in any of the clubs. But that's parallel to society. Most of the counters will be white and middle class and female. We then looked at, so what about the doctors who take a responsibility for mental health? They're mainly white and middle class as well. So we then looked at educational welfare officers, same. But one of the crucial things, Peter, was the content of the training did not reflect the heritage or diversity within the clubs. So it's very much from what we call a Eurocentric lens. And that's a perennial problem in coach education, that it's not diverse enough in the models, theories and approaches. And we are at a critical moment now where we've got huge numbers of people from ethnic diverse communities who are being misdiagnosed continually within sports, within society. And it's a crucial issue as well. Hence, and I've said this to you, Steve, you are crucial comrade in producing these models from a mentoring perspective as well, to make sure it's intricately aligned to everything we do from the four corners to the England DNA as well. But I'm going to be really provocative tonight. There's a responsibility for whiteness to change as well, because the focus has been on us. And I think your model of reverse mentoring is crucial. That part of mental health is we assimilate into structures that do not reflect who we actually are. And that causes a lot of mental distress in children in schools, children in employment, children in education, and children that end up in certain settings. But also, we've got some great coaches here. Our coaching needs to be much more culturally reflective of the 7% of diversity within the clubs. Mm-hmm. So I'm forcing everyone, and I've said to everyone here, everybody here should be writing their PhDs, they should be writing their theories. If we do not produce a book, a collective book of models and theories before I pass on to the next life, we would have left the generation down about what is the best way to work in diversity. So great question. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. we've got a comment from Tom Griffiths. Thank you, Tom. I can recall the overt racist chants of Zigga Zagga. I can recall those as well, Tom, back in the day. But is the more covert or hidden racism, which still persists on match days, harder to deal with? Is anybody would like to take that question? I'm quite happy to delegate it, but would somebody like to offer up a response? Is this covert racism hard to deal with today?
Steve, I'll take that.
Thank you, Peter.
I think it is, because it plays into a narrative around emotion. So when somebody does something that quite clearly has racist overtones, they'll dress it up in a way that where you as the receiver of the racism, you have nowhere to go, because it's such a clever and systemic part of structures in this country that are built not to bring people in, but they're built to keep people out. So what we have is a situation whereby even if you want to, say, for example, change the narrative around Black and Asian coaches, say, coming into football, you actually can't, because the system is set up to keep you out. So if you then try to dismantle that, what then happens, the whole thing comes apart. And it means people who are at the top, they have to leave their jobs, because they will have been part of keeping people out, whether that be black men, black women, Asian women, women in general. Those people have to leave, because you then now saying, well, actually, over all these years, you've deliberately kept people out. So it's really so when we talk about racism and the covertness of it, it is really built around power, money, class, all those things that we as Black people, when we start to go into football clubs, we didn't go to the schools that those white male middle classes, we didn't go to Eton, we didn't go to Oxbridge and all that sort of stuff. So it now means that they have to build structures that don't allow you to get in, because now that means if you get in, it means that you can now start taking their place. And I think that's why it's so hard to kind of get to see it and to feel it. We as Black people, we feel it, but we actually can't put our finger on it, because you have to be part of the person who assembled it to be able to disassemble it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Absolutely brilliant. A question, perhaps if Butch or if he could jump in with this one, or both. Question from Ben Kamara, brilliant, fantastic coach, working in the Shropshire region, not too far from me. If you don't know Ben, reach out, connect with Ben, absolutely fantastic guy, brilliant coach as well, very much part of the future. Hi everyone, I missed the first part, but he's got a question. How can we as coaches get involved in helping our fellow coaches? And what can we do in terms of the process they've been through? How do we support them? Sorry, I'm stuttering because it's the while I'm reading it, it's moving. Before today, I thought I was alone, and I don't want anybody else to feel that way. If it's sort of tagging Butch was out, Butch, we're doing quite a lot to get Butch more Black and Asian mixed heritage coaches into the game and support them, Butch.
Yeah, Steve, thank you, and Ben, thanks for your question. I think it's really important that we're in a place now where we recognise what Pete really talked about, which are some of the endemic issues that are prevalent in the game. And dependent on whether you're a grassroots coach or whether you're trying to, you're an aspirational, intentional coach trying to break into the professional game as well, there are a number that I'm glad to say that Ben said that he doesn't feel alone, or someone said that, because I think that's really important. Because what we are developing is we've got a number of different programs that are supporting coaches now. I think it's really important that, when you feel like you are alone, and we do have a number of communities of practice out there, it's important that you reach out, because you probably think you're alone, but actually there are probably a number of people feeling exactly the same way as you are as well. But it's a case of just reaching out. And on the point of mental health in particular, Steve, I think that sometimes we see that as the invisible disease. You know, we live in this macho football environment where, when it was predominantly males playing it, it was a case of, that was a sign of weakness if you actually displayed any signs of mental health. But actually, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength, and it says that you have an understanding of who you are and what you're going through. And I think it's really important that, reading some of the notes around, really important that we evolve the language around mental health. That I think I think it was from Jacques who said that, it can also be healthy and positive, and I think that's really important. But what is alarming is some of the results that are coming out from Dr. Bennett and also Dr. King around the fact that, we do look at it, the support that is out there, especially at the clubs, is more of a Eurocentric lens, which then probably has a disconnection with a number of black players. And also remember that, a number of these players that are coming into the game, especially ethnically diverse players, are coming from really difficult environments in the first place. And this for them is this incredible opportunity, not only to play professional football, but to change not only their lives, but probably their families' lives as well, Steve.
Thank you so much, Butch. Thank you. And Ben, thanks for the question. We're going to pick up a couple more, Ben. If you're okay, Jack's saying here, what have been the clues to successful Black and Asian players, coaches, and managers? So, if you've got enough understanding from what Jack's after there, if that's okay, or Jack, if you'd like to direct the question directly towards Iffy and Butch on that.
Evening, everybody. I don't know whether Jacques wants to add to it, but in terms of what I understand the question at the moment, I remember back going 2003 when we sat on a committee with at the time a bit younger Premier League, the FA, people like Trevor Brooking was on it, the PFA colleagues and friends now, Simone and Bobby Barnes at the time, and we looked ahead and looked at the landscape and looked at the lack of black coaches in the game, throughout the game, and never mind head coaches throughout the game. And that was in 2003. And actually, when we went on to 2005 and 6, and I was one of the 7, we had 7 black managers at the time. That's actually turned out to be the kind of high watermark.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever gone more than that.
No.
In fact, we're probably down to about 3 or 4 now. Nuno's just left. So that dial hasn't shifted. The more interesting piece of work is done by Steve Bradbury. We looked at the stats for senior coaching positions in the game in 2016, and he extrapolated all the top 5. So first team coach, head coach, assistant manager, all those positions, and aggregated it up and found that 4% of that fraternity was black. And actually, if you wanted to dive down even more, Charlton, QPR, and another club, which forgets in London, accounted. Reading, yeah, thanks, Butch. Accounted for half of that, 4%. And that dial hasn't changed much. So we haven't moved this dial very far, very much. So in answer to Jacques, what's the clues to successful Asian black players? And by the way, Asian players is another conversation altogether.
Yeah.
So in answer, I guess, to kind of just address the issue of black managers, we haven't solved that. We have not solved that discussion. Butch will know well, and a lot of people know some of the initiatives we're doing now, belatedly, to try and address some of those things. Won't even filter through for a few years yet now. We're dealing with some of the younger coaches coming through my generation. That train's passed. So we're now looking at generations before that and all the issues that we're trying to, initiatives that are welcome, the diversity code from the FA, the Premier League got the No Room for Racism, PFA have been absolute pioneers in some of this stuff from my time there. None of that will feed through realistically for a few more years yet. So we're in this space at the moment where we feel that more's being done, but the optics still look exactly the same. And that's, I guess, a comms issue. We have to try and convince people that we're trying to move in the right direction, however slowly. But we have to hold people's feet to the fire around targets, realistic targets, to make sure people are signed up for it. It's not tokenism. We want the same opportunities for coaches of all colours. We want to make sure that those opportunities aren't a tick box exercise. So there's questions to ask of who are the recruiters in clubs, who are the recruiters around the stakeholders, what does leadership look like amongst organisations, and we need to football, because football's overrepresented in terms of black participation. We use that, and we're not ashamed to use that as vehicle for change in wider society. Because outside football, it doesn't look good either. So this is a societal problem that we're all trying to address. The optics around leadership are and haven't moved at all. So the people and the pioneers who get through, the Chrissy Hootons, the Chris Powells, we have to support them, and they're great advocates of what we're trying to do. Darren Moore, hope Darren's on the call. Proud to call him a friend as well as a pioneer in this space. We need load more Darren Moores to come through as well, sooner rather than later. But it's not a complete picture. It's very much a continuum. And realistically, we're at the beginning of that continuum, nowhere near the end. But I think it's incumbent upon us to not lose faith, because it's not doing it for my generations. It's to try and be upfront for the generations that come. Apologies, I've got kids on half term.
Hey, don't be silly. Don't be silly, Iffy.
So,
don't be silly.
But no, that's what we're looking
That's
at.
the generation we're looking after. We're
That's
trying to
it.
protect, Iffy. That's the generation we're trying to protect, yeah.
Thank you,
Iffy.
Just picking up on Iffy's points, because I think they're absolutely resonated with me in the work that I do. But I also think that sometimes we kind of like we need to look at it from a number of different perspectives. I think Iffy's touched on recruitment. I think that's absolutely critical, that we need to have accountable and transparent recruitment processes, and we're really conscious that that's not happening currently in the game. I think also this piece around unconscious bias, the negative stereotyping of certain communities. I mean, if he mentioned the South Asian community, the biggest statistical anomaly in the game, without a doubt, quote unquote, Sanjay said that from chair of Kick It Out. I think it's absolutely crucial that we look at two specific areas for me, and that's the reason why we've got a Black and Asian plan, Steve. For Black coaches who are clearly the disparity between playing and coaching in the professional game, but for Asians, the complete invisibility. And then I think we need to really ask ourselves what our own as Black and Asian coaches, what does our networking look like? And are we getting out there? Do people know who we are? And I think a number of the different programs that we've got currently around supporting and developing coaches who are in a UEFA B space, but also interesting that I've seen a quick comment, which I didn't see the full one on, Steve, around Black and Asian coaches plateauing at level 2 as well. We've just had 4 years of a UEFA B bursary program in which we put through nearly 295 coaches who have now got the UEFA B. So we've certainly got a diverse talent pipeline that's waiting to break into the professional game. The next step is to look at the Football Leadership Diversity Code, recognize those clubs that have actually signed up to it. They've got to be accountable now. They've got to come across and say that, we're opening those doors, and those same people that have in the past have been quite nepotistic in the way that they've recruited. We need to ensure that we've got accountability and transparency there. And I think what some of these programs will enable us to do is not only give the coaches the experience and the exposure. We can't guarantee employability, but what we can do is improve their employability skills and make them more employable. What we can't guarantee is employment, Steve.
No. Thank you, Butch. Jack, thanks.
Can I cheekily add something? I'm really sorry.
Go ahead, Amira. Go ahead, Amira.
Just touch on Pete's point about how can we infiltrate kind of everything that's been in place, and obviously, Butch, what you said, and Iffy, what you said. I've just so happens towards the end of my journey, as in the last 5 years, I've joined the Fans for Diversity campaign. So Michael Bennett would probably know about this, the PFA, and I'm on the Surrey Football Coaches Association committee. So again, they asked me to come along as a female representative, but it just so happens they've never had an Asian female join their committee, and I've as much as I repelled the idea of joining committee, because I kind of thought myself as not someone that's great on a kind of board sort of scenario, but it's if anyone wants to make a difference in respect to the comment that was made about how can I support the lonely coach, and I've found in terms of getting involved and learning about the issues grassroots level, it really is effective. I'm in so many projects at the moment, including helping children on the cusp of crime. So Pete, just going back to your point about how can we infiltrate the generations and change what's happening now, we need to go right back to grassroots level, right back to when they're ickle at the matches alongside the dad, the grandparent. To be honest, me bringing along my kind of being there in that capacity as a coach or a player, it's having an impact, them learning that I'm Asian, my story and whatnot. So I would recommend any of the sort of audience today to really look at kind of getting involved with Kick It Out as well, and Backer and just kind of just sharing your input and the difference that you want to make. So that's all I wanted to add, Steve.
Thank you. Fantastic contributions, everybody. And again, thanks for the questions. We had the next one, we had a comment from Nash. Nash, thank you for your comment. It's great that now we've got lots of interaction. Ben, again, thank you, Ben. Lots of racism nowadays. It's smarter. It comes across as bad vibes, resentment. You can't prove it, but it's racially motivated. No, but you and I are talking at the moment, Ben, aren't we? How we can feel it and we can sense it. And that's why we need to support each other. Jack, do we believe our language, Colin? Colin, really pressing for you, if you don't mind. Do we believe our language has to evolve? Mental health can be sort of healthy and positive, as well as symptoms individuals suffer with their mental health. Too many jumping on the attractive bandwagon of mental health, Colin. So do we need to change maybe the language, the narrative around mental health?
Yeah, because it's become a commercialized commodity now. It's become an industry. And we're in danger of repeating what we did with Black people in schools in terms of misdiagnosis. And we need to reverse the narrative so it comes from an Afrocentric perspective. Someone's put in the slide about Frantz Fanon, and I would really ask people to read Frantz Fanon to understand the deep psychological damage that's done to Black people through the post-colonial period, and the role of sport has done to our minds and our body, and how we internalize that damage to the point that we don't feel worthy enough. And I think that's where we are positioned as coaches. We don't feel worthy enough. We don't feel important. We don't feel that self-determination that we should be doing. Fanon says that very pointedly, but we are recreating an artifact of whiteness. As a coach, I always tried to coach like a white person, because most of the people who taught me to coach were white coaches. And I realized I had to refine myself and my identity and do a lot of soul seeking. And we need to empower the internal cognitive software of our young people to feel positive about who they are. They have worth, they have self-esteem, they have rights. And with that, we've got to stop manufacturing a structure that fits the way we are accommodated into white systems. So equality, I'm not into it anymore. Diversity inclusion is manufactured, yeah? Let's use language and narrative that fits who we actually are and do not. I am annoyed today because I've heard who is the new person who's taken over from Steve. I am amazed. I am frightened. And we've got to become more politicized. People get frightened of that. Football is a political structure. And we ask the wrong questions. It's not why there are so few Black coaches. Why are there so few people, so many people of white heritage dominating this structure? Unless we change the narrative, we're often actually looking as if we're not good enough as coaches. And I think this is something that was said by the ex-technical director of Chelsea. I think he wrote an article about this. I can't remember his name. Maybe if you can help me remember who his name is.
Michael Marinello. Is it Michael Marinello?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, why aren't we writing our own models and theories and practices? Why are we still using books that are not part of who we actually are? Amara's here. Why is she not writing a book on the theory and the practice that changes the narrative? Because if we don't, we'll be talking about these psychological damaging issues that are affecting our mental health, our children's mental health, the family's mental health. And lastly, Black men need to think about holistically about these issues and not think about competing with white men for these positions. We've got to think about the generation of women that we need to support through this as well. And Malcolm X said this crucially, you know, to liberate the nation, to educate the woman is to liberate the nation. It's really powerful rhetoric. And we got to think about ourselves, about our Black masculinity and how we think about ourselves and how we are stopping Black women coming through. Because we're at a moment at the FA, I don't think there's a Black woman in the senior coaching position in the FA, am I right?
That's correct, yeah, that's correct.
So that is a really sad indictment of an industry we call equality that leads to inequality. So we've got to sit down and really begin to change the narrative about how we want to be represented. If we're not, it's going to continue damage our psyche and who we actually are. I'm sorry that sounded too painful or powerful, but that's the reality.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colin. Thank you. But Ben, I'll try and come back to that point in a bit because I think parts that have been answered, Ben. But I just want to go to Rashid Abba, the brilliant Rashid Abba, and the amazing work he does in East London and beyond, and his legacy in Leicester. Islamophobia in grassroots affecting certain South Asian communities in football. Islamophobia in grassroots football.
Do you mind me picking that one up, Steve?
Thank you, Butch.
The simple answer is yes, of course it is. You know, and we've got to recognise what Islamophobia is as well. I think often we fail to recognise that, you know, right across the country, it doesn't matter where you are playing on a football pitch. In 2001, when I was playing on a football pitch, it was the most difficult place to be after 9/11. In 2007, after 7/7, it was just as difficult. And I think that there's a clear narrative that first of all, we need to recognise that it's a hate crime. And until we start recognise it as a hate crime, then I think that, you know, we can then sanction those who are perpetrating those types of crime, and then we hold them to account as well. So it's had a massive effect. It continues to have a massive effect, and you know, there's no surprise that, you know, the lack of South Asian Muslim females, for example, who are now feeling confident enough to walk back onto a football pitch, but for a number of years that would never have been possible. Forget a football pitch; they couldn't walk down the street, Steve.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, Butch. Powerful. Powerful. Thank you, Rashid. Peter, Jason. Peter, Jason. How do we ensure that this knowledge and experience is passed down the generations so that people don't need to reinvent the wheel? It's one of the things that I know Colin speaks passionately about. We all do. Is we keep saying generational change, Pete, but it doesn't seem to come. How do we need to do, Pete? How do we ensure this our knowledge and experiences to prevent the same issues happening? What do we do, Pete, in football?
Well, you know, I've been thinking about this a fair amount just recently, because of all the changes that have happened, especially within our own organisation and also within football. And what tends to happen is that we lose the brilliant Black coaches that we have because they're not in work or they can't get a job somewhere. But then what we do is we forget about them. So we leave them. So imagine that you've got yourself, Colin, me, Butch, whatever it is. And we don't have the jobs that we have, but we're still coaches and we've still got high levels of qualification. Nobody goes to us and says, oh, actually, can you help this group of coaches over here? Because they're the next ones coming through and they need your help and guidance. That's what we should be doing. We should be going back and saying, well, who were the pioneers? The Noel Blakes, you know, the Paul Davises. These are the people who were the pioneers who came before us and are still knocking it out of the park. but they've gone quiet. Why have they gone quiet? It's not because of them. It's because the system has made them quiet. So what we need to do, we need to get them out and say, well, actually, we're going to hold an event where they are there and they'll talk about football. They talk about coaching. We talk about all the things that surround coaching, but we don't talk about coaching, because that's what happens when you go into clubs. You go into clubs, and the clubs, which is normally run by white people, the head of coaching, whatever, says, sorry, mate, that's the game. You know, you get all that thing, and it's that narrative, that continue narrative. Well, actually, we do know the game, and we have people who know the game. You know, Colin talks about being authentic, being your authentic self when you coach. And I remember him saying that to me once. I did a session at Greenwich. He said to me, Pete, you're replicating the way that you were taught as a coach educator. Now, I didn't see that until Colin told me about it, and it made me change the way I coach. So when I coach to the people who were in front of me, not because I was coached. I went through that education system. You know, when I passed my badges, I realized that I had to put on a mask and act like the coach educator, as opposed to being able to act like myself. So all those things, and then it then becomes intrinsically part of you. So we've got to change that, and that starts by having more people on the courses who look like the people who are walking through the door. We need more black coaches. We need more female coaches. We need more black women coaches, so that when people come walk through the door, they go, actually, there's somebody who looks like me. There's somebody who I can actually relate to. Now we have real change. But until that happens, we are going to keep having this conversation. And, you know, I remember back in the day, Butch, Colin, myself, you, Steve, going into rooms at the back of football stadiums, sneaking in the back, having to have these conversations back then, back in 2001, right, 2005, you know, all those years ago. It's the same conversation. That conversation hasn't changed. So
say something very quickly, Steve. I think Peter's right. I just want to get the perspective of Noel Quinn for the time.
Brilliant, Peter.
Absolutely outstanding, and that artifact of who we are is really important. Noel Quinn's actually here. We just want to summarise, if that's okay. It's 6:20, 6:24 at the moment. Is that okay?
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Colin. Yes, that's fine.
Sorry,
thank you, Noel.
And apologies from Darren's been called in to a meeting to buy players, and he's offered me a contract, so I'm really pleased with that.
He really is in a bad way up there, isn't he?
You know what really pisses me off tonight? We're talking about mental health, and I've just expressed something really personal. I read the message. It says he's put a contract on me, not he's given me a contract. No, if you'd like to summarise, it'd be really helpful. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thanks, Colin. This has been really fascinating for me. When I started at The Lancet just over 10 years ago, the only time that really I heard about mental health in sport was in studies from the United States of America. And these were studies on what the Americans call football, that is American football. And these were studies which were concerned about the mental health of the athletes involved in that game. But the approach was purely a biomedical one. It was based around looking for mechanical brain injuries in people playing the sport. Now, I don't have any trouble with that research as such, but I think it's very revealing that when faced with mental health problems in sport, the professional attitude was to immediately look for a sort of biomedical cause of it. So it's been really fantastic that in the past couple of years, and what's really crystallized this evening, is the development and the awareness of a more complex picture. Sorry, I'm just going to turn my camera out of the sun a bit. So mental health, of course, in sport, as I've been hearing tonight, is about all kinds of different things. It sits at this intersection of race, of class, of gender, as Amira has described, of economics, of, as Michael described, the digital world, of politics and of culture. It's clear that what we need to do collectively is to figure out a way to nurture the next generation And this is not only for the sake of these individuals, which would be a good reason in itself, but it's also because, you know, we've seen through the example of players such as Marcus Rashford, just how inspirational football can be and how it can benefit the well-being of people who might not even be involved in the game directly in the first place. So it seems to me that there is the space here to think about and to build a strategy. I'd be very interested after this meeting in discussing with the people here some of the ways in which the Lancet Psychiatry might facilitate the writing and the publication of this strategy, because, you know, it's clear everyone here knows what they're talking about, and it's clear that there are some fantastic ideas, some great perspectives, and most importantly, these perspectives are rooted in something there's no substitute for, which is first-hand experience. So thanks, that's all I've got to say. I'll hand back to Colin if that's all right.
I think that invitation is really positive and heartening, and I'll be chasing people up to follow that up. I think that's where our legacy starts. I was going to mention Boris Johnson and all the things he thinks about us and how we look in terms of what about or won't. I'm going to pass over to Mark. And I'd just say thank you very, very, very much. I didn't think somebody could make me look bad tonight, but you've just been outstanding, and you are the way forward, and I'm really privileged to be here. Peter, just as usual, you're just a waste of time. I'm going to leave it. And Steve, I was going to say, Steve, I just hope your partner's okay. I know if you're going, but we are leaving. You don't know how significant a moment this is. It's making me kind of upset that Steve is leaving the FA. And when you lose warriors, you lose people you can depend on. Your position, your right, your politics, your ability to self-define who you are through somebody who's authentic and listen goes away. And I know you're going to a job with more money and less work, and it's quite near home. So we don't want to say you sold out. I would never say that to you in a public message. Yeah.
Yeah.
You start your retirement job at the.
I've only taken a job in hoping I'm getting to get an MBE at the end of it.
Yeah. All right. I'll pass it over to but also, can I say in my bot rank, Iffy, thank you very much. Iffy said, yeah, come on board, and Iffy, extra large, size 11. Beyond that, you are being inspirational. And on the line, I know we got Simone, hopefully still there. We got Rashid. There's a whole heap of people that have been really supportive. Niall has given us the Oris branch. If we don't grab it, we're going to let ourselves down. So let's go for it. Is that okay? Butch, thank you very much indeed as well. You've been unbelievable. I'll pass you over to the generation that goes after me. Lewis.
Thank you, Colin. And thank you to everyone. I mean it. Everyone that's attended, everyone that spoke. And most importantly, Pete, I believe it was you that said earlier, you're still having this conversation 15, 16 years later. And I don't think you know how grateful I am that you are still having it, in a sense, just because if you weren't, I don't know where we would be. I don't know where myself would be. I don't know where the other coaches that I've got on there would be. It would just be a mess. So thank you. I can understand you lot's frustration. It must be just like banging your head against the wall. But I believe change will come. I believe change will happen. But we just got to keep going. We've got to, everyone here right now is pivotal in football. So clearly we're doing something right. But with that being said, thank you. And I'll be in contact with everyone. Thank you very much.
Great job, Lewis. Thank you.
Lewis,
brilliant job.
Make sure you call me, Lewis. Yeah, make sure you call me.
Thank you.
I don't know why you're wasting your time with him, mate, but good luck.
Colin, I've got that. Colin, I've got that year's supply of Slim Fast for you. It's in the back of the car.
Anyway, thank you very much for a positive mental health exit message. My mental eating disorder. I wish you all the best. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Brilliant.
Fantastic webinar, Colin. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Lewis. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Lewis.
Well done.
Fantastic webinar.
Oh, thank you, John, as well, for doing all the admin. Yeah, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Cheers.
Steve, is this the last time we're seeing you then? Are you now currently FA folk?
I'm going to another job. I'm not dying or going to the moon. I'm still working in football.
No, you're a massive reason why I'm still around.
Yeah,
I'm
don't be
leaving
silly.
and
Listen,
no.
you're the main reason you're around.
No, don't
No,
even
listen,
start.
I'll still be doing this. I've just got a different job title, same person, different job title. And as Colin so wonderfully told 30 odd people, massive pay rise as well.
Yeah. I've got to say this sincerely, Steve. You don't deserve it, but you know, I want to be authentic and to the point. If somebody,
I'm loving this, Colin. Like Colin, I've got. Do you know what? You know, I'm such a grassroots fool, and I'd love to get you. I'd love to get you on one of the grassroots platforms that I'm on, because you guys, this is amazing. See this chat that we've had. This is the stuff that the corner of my earth need to see. Need to be exposed to, and the only way I can't even explain to you what corner of the earth I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you know, these generations that have been brought up on that controversial kind of, you know, the whatever it is that's been imprinted in them. However, they are curious as to who am I, why am I of a certain color of skin, and you know, so I really, as much as, you know what, Pete, just on your point of, I can't believe 2001 and conversation's still the same. This is crazy.
so
and
is coaching.
I don't, do you know what, I barely passed my degree. I'm such a loser academically, but I from what I've been exposed to and the projects that I'm currently involved in, like kids on the cusp of crime, kids in the prime of their families of all spectrums on the cusp of crime. These are personally, what I feel, they are a portion of the grassroots kind of audience that you guys, they need to meet. Colin, they need to hear your story. They need to hear, you know, Steve, Louis, Pete. These are the kids that I don't have answers to, because I don't have that level of experience. But when I listen to all your stories, I see the presentations, I see, you know, Colin, you graced me with such. I wish my mum had been in on this call, because she thinks I'm such a loser all the time.
Say that.
And you
Don't
say
say that.
you should have something written down. You know, you should have a book. Wow, because
Well, we've nearly finished
like,
the book. We've done the book. The book I've been writing for 20 years is called They Diagnosed Me as Schizophrenic When I was Just a Gemini. We're trying to get that published.
But
also,
I can't even
Amara,
explain.
it would be great if you could write this journal for Lancet.
Oh, do you know what, Colin? If only I could write. I can't. People tell you I'm useless.
You're not.
That's not true
I've
at
been
all.
doing my B license for about 10 years now.
We haven't even finished it yet. So,
Yeah.
But in terms of, you know what, I'm going to throw it out there. In terms of changing the conversation, Pete, if you're saying the conversation's still going on, the same old webinar, the same old, you know, and everyone gets in and sends their question, goes away, carries on with their life. I'm in the thick of it, and I didn't even mean to be in the thick of it. But you know what? It's just where I am, and that's where I'm. The stuff that you're talking about, the crux. I really do think I need you guys in with me, grassroots level. Let's just try something different. You've got nothing to lose. You've been doing the same thing or similar things for so long. However it is, I'm going to try and make it work. I'm going to try.
That's what we want. I mean, I'm now chair of the Inclusion Advisory Group in Surrey at the moment, so I'll be picking Steve's brain. I mean, I think we need to get people in those decision-making processes. It's really important, because I'm seeing some of the processes that are taking place, but
the experiences you guys have given me, Steve, you took my mum, no member of my family to
Wembley.
Hotel. Absolutely. To Wembley, to Hilton Hotel. You know, Colin Pardew, as much as he is, I know every manager is as seasonal as a monthly magazine in this country, but I still remember my Pardew experience, and yeah, I for whatever reason I don't shout it out loud that I have had that. But you guys, Pete, you gave me that. You gave me that experience, and that's something, you know, I didn't have my, you know, I didn't have a dad to grow up with, and my mum had all the whatever to deal with in the younger years. So you gave me the experience that I can't even. I need to write this down. Clearly, I need to.
Yeah, you do.
I need
Yeah,
to
you
be rich
do.
enough to have someone to
Yeah,
pay
you
someone
do.
to write this down for me. But
Yeah, you do.
what you guys are doing, yeah, you've these little bits, these building blocks have built me to the point where I'm having so much hassle in grassroots that I want to quit and go, and just too hard. I don't get paid for it. I'm still a volunteer, but something in me that you add to my engine, you add to my fire in my belly. And that's why, and that's probably the same way for you, Louis. Like I felt from you telling us your journey that you've near enough been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But there's just you guys need to. I don't see your face. I know you. I know your faces, but you need to now be in the faces of the upcoming generations. And I pray that I'm able to enlist you guys when I'm emailing you and WhatsApping you. I know Pete already.
Always, yeah, always. I've like, I've just moved to Cheshire where they've got a great county FA. There's a great county FA.
Where is Chester? Is that a visa or is that?
Colin, I'll be honest with you, mate. Yeah, you're on a list. You won't get in. You won't get in.
Is that the blacklist with? That's the real blacklist, isn't it? Not the one
Yeah, you won't get in, Colin.
Really?
Colin, you won't get in. You won't get in. Peter tried. We turned him at the border.
I was seen off by the dogs.
Oh, yeah, he said that to somebody on a call. Oh dear, Pete. Oh dear.
There's not enough conversations of this caliber. There's not enough at county level.
Steve, can I ask you a question now? I don't know if this is the right time. How do you feel about leaving and the legacy and the person, what's going on? I'm not sure, because this is a very crossroad moment.
Yeah, it is. I'm Pete knows I'm sad to leave, but it's the right time to leave, and you know, there's loads of good people still trying to do great things, and lots of them are on this call. You know, the future belongs to everybody, including Amira and the brilliant Lewis on this call. And I kind of can be proud, Colin, of the work that we've all done, you included, and you know, Pete's a big part of that, and Amira and Butch. We can all be proud of the stuff that's going on. Still loads to do. It's a nightmare. There's still loads to do, but it's also an opportunity to make a difference in a different way, Colin. I would still expect to be invited onto this, but I just have a different title. I still have a same role, is to try and make sure that it's a more inclusive game for everybody. Ironically, Colin, and paradoxically, outside of the FA, in that role, I probably have more influence.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can use that influence for good.
And I think I like Amara's that everybody does something at a personal cost, isn't it? This is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all gone.
No, absolutely. Remember what Dr. Martin Luther King said? Everybody can be great because everybody can serve.
Yeah.
And if we all do our bit to help, then you know that is our strength. Unity is definitely our strength.
Yeah. Peter,
me and Pete talk about this all the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this while Steve's here, so I want him to hear this, and I want everybody else to hear this as well. Steve Smithies is a man who's pushed boundaries and pushed people in ways that they've never been pushed before. I've seen Steve really, he's never backed down from anything. When I heard he was leaving, I'm not gonna lie, it's probably one of the saddest days in football that I've ever had, because one of the reasons why I wanted to stay in the FA at the time of the reshuffle was because working with Steve was a really big part of that. It was massive, and now he's not going to be there. I mean, I've spent I feel like I've been in the morning since his announcement, honestly, because I think to myself, who's actually going to really drive the agenda around DNI? Because Steve didn't push it, he drove it. He went into rooms and fought on his own, right? Seeing him and Butch having to fight the way that they have to fight, and this is why we need to make sure that the people like Steve and Butch, that regardless of whatever we think, we have to support them. We have to support them. We have to back them up 100%. Because the point is that we don't have too many leaders like Steve's and Butch, and you, Colin, as well. You led this. I wouldn't be here, Colin, if you hadn't done the things that you did.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm still around. I'm sure you thought I was just gonna drop off, but I keep on, Colin, because I know it annoys you. So that's why I keep doing it. So, but I think one of the things we have to remember is that yes, Steve's going to Cheshire, but I know that Steve will keep asking the question, and I think just from my own personal point of view, it's sad for me to see him go, because I know that he would have really made sure that the work around DNI would have been really, really kept to the front of kept front and center of everything, because he always says it. He pushes the people in the other department, says, no, you can't just say that DNI is our responsibility. It's your responsibility too, in women and girls, in PE, whatever it is, because it runs through everything. You can't have it. You can't say it's just in this corner. No, if you're not being inclusive, you're part of the problem. And Steve has pushed that agenda.
I think what came out for me tonight is having Iffy here felt there was a sense of a collective. It wasn't a professional game grassroots. And I've not felt that before. That sort of like Michael, it felt like we were working together as people from a particular experience, rather professional, which sometimes I think the structures divide us. So, Michael stays in the professional game. I think if we can get that unity across it, and the unity is the challenges around inequality that we're facing in the system. And also with Steve going to the county FA, which is a big challenge, isn't it, Steve? In terms of
it is.
It's a massive challenge, because people do not realise the kind of like those historical colonial structures. They're really hard to penetrate and change.
Yeah, they are, but it helps. I suppose, Colin, it helps what position you're in. But I've also got a responsibility for a business with a turnover of £1 million and employs £1 million a year and employs 20 people. I've got responsibility to them. We've got responsibility to county and the thousands of players and clubs and leagues and coaches, and I've got a responsibility to make sure that it's welcoming, and it's welcoming and it's inclusive and safe and supportive of every community, whether it be black, white, male, female, old, young, low socioeconomic groups, LGBT, disability. We've got to try and just keep fighting that, making sure that it's inclusive and people feel valued and people feel part of it, because the game belongs to everybody, Colin. That's the most important thing. The game belongs to everybody.
You could lead by example. You could start, you could start something that's different, that's not happening already with county FAs.
That's the plan. That's certainly the plan, Amira. That's the plan. We got plans for that already. Yeah, we got plans for that. Yeah. So it's a great camp. There's loads of good people working for equality for the FA. There's loads of good people working across the county FAs. There's loads of good people in society and all the other support organisations. And we've just got to make sure we keep talking to each other, keep supporting each other, and keep trying to make a difference. But whilst recognising, Colin, for every good person, there are still people out there that don't want us to be successful or don't want it to be inclusive. So we've got to keep our wits about us. Let's just say. So
just to end on a positive, if I can get a meeting with Niall about following up on his offer, would you guys like to be involved in that?
Yeah, count me in on that, Colin.
Yeah, count me in on that. Yeah,
I wasn't talking to you, Peter. I just want to keep
He's been brutal to you, mate, today. Brutal.
Yeah. Well, I know why. He's just angry.
You're boring, Peter. You're boring, Peter. You are really. You are. Even when I told you.
You guys, Colin, Steve, Pete on a panel, it'll just be the best. It'll be a comical night.
It was just like, we wouldn't take it seriously. When Pete goes on, we all go on mute. Is he finished? All right, look at him.
Brilliant.
Hey, Colin, he got caught. He was on a live webinar last night and he got quiet on mute. and
I was there. I was there.
Were you there? He
Oh,
said,
yeah.
he said, I'm not used to this technology thing.
Peter, it was so bad. Someone put snoring in the chat. Z, 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 Z.
Colin.
Snoring. Hey, Pete, at least you weren't at a cricket match.
Yeah.
Bam's at a cricket match. You hear all the kids in the background.
Everybody went on mute. Is he
Pete.
finished yet? Yeah. Well,
Pete, I was texting him, going, get yourself on mute. Get yourself on mute.
Colin, I'm loving you because just you're getting on now. So you know, you're like that. You're like the Black Victor Meldrew now. You know what I mean? You're just angry all the time. You need
I'm older than that.